everybody. Welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking with Alex Boianghu. Alex, it's great to connect with you. Journeytowholeness.health is your website. Think community in the heart of every problem, it's a solution. And what Alex does is EMDR. He's a gifted therapist who works with individuals. He works with couples. For more than 25 years of experience of his clinical work, he's been utilizing an integrative holistic approach with an emphasis of healing trauma through integrated EMDR, nonduality therapy. The list goes on. And we're going to talk a lot about integrating the mind, body, and spirit on today's episode. Alex, it's great to connect with you. I've been going to holistic doctors. I'm 51 since I was in my mid-20s. I go to them still now. I go to a Buddhist monk, acupuncture. People in my family have had EMDR. And so I'm a big fan of your space. And so of course. I like to start every podcast. I'm a business coach and I work with solopreneurs to fortune companies all over the globe who are successful and stuck. And so I like to start off every podcast talking about, you typically, where's this stuck of yours and how do you get unstuck? But because of what you do, I want to change the question a little bit and ask, where's a place that people get stuck in what you do and how it can help them, and how do you get them unstuck?
Ready for how many hours do we have?
We have about 19
minutes. So the question begins with understanding how stuck happens, and then the process of unstuck, right? So because of time, let's make it really direct and really simple. We as human beings are biological beings. We are a nervous system that is meant to learn and to keep us alive. And due to the nature of that nervous system, can become quite limited then as we mature out of survival to thrival, as I call it. And so the whole movement of getting stuck is because we're over-identified, one, with the biological system, and two, the patterns of what we've learned about life and about ourselves, right? So in the most simplistic way, it's basically is that we're using the same reference point again.
Yeah.
Stuck means an inflexibility and an adjustment to what the situation demands, what the sense of I am demands. So getting unstuck means more flexibility and shifting a frame of reference in the most simplistic way, without me spending a long time discussing that.
I love it. Think community, we've talked a lot on the show about being flexible. When I hate even talking about COVID, but when COVID happened, it taught us all how to be flexible and how to pivot and how to surrender. And I interviewed my trainer the other day on the show, and one of the things he was talking about is being open to the random. Hayden Nickerman, and it was like being open to, and that's exactly kind of what you're talking about, right?
Yes,
being open to the random. So think community, be open to it. Okay, that was great, Alex. I want to talk about something you said, how stuck happens. And I want to talk a little bit about, I've been studying this for a while, and I actually just watched a documentary, which I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but I'm actually interviewing the guy who did it next week. But in it, and a lot of the holistic people that I go to, they talk a lot about inflammation and stagnation. And so when you talk about how stuck happens, can you talk a little bit about inflammation and stagnation and how we can evolve from that, how we can heal from that, and what that does to us, and why we need to do something about it?
Let's use an analogy. Let's say you're driving down the road and you want to get somewhere, whatever that is, in a relationship, financially, spiritually, it doesn't really matter what it is. And you're driving down the highway, and then the road becomes blocked at some point. It just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't get you to where you want to go. And the highway has now closed off some of the ramps. But yet you keep insisting. One keeps insisting that I want to get to it by going off that ramp. And so back to the flexibility. If then I develop a resistance to a new way, a new view about life, about self, all of a sudden I'm going to start to create a physiological response of inflammation. So we have to understand what inflammation and stagnation are, right? Inflammation and stagnation basically are energetic non-movement. So energetic non-movement is equal to lack of flexibility.
Right.
So when we are not flexible, the body demonstrates that inflexibility by creating inflammation and stagnation. Inflammation basically are cytokines and inflammatory markers
Right.
due to a resistance. So it's very interesting how the body demonstrates that, hey, you're having resistance. So we're going to inflame you. The inflammation is meant to be seen as a reflection in the mirror to make some changes. So in terms of the biochemical stuff, one needs to understand medicine a little bit, is that the adrenals start to produce cortisol, then you have adrenaline in the body. And as those flow, and they don't stop due to inflexibility, they're going to create that the body's going to start to fight itself because there's too much of that going on. So the body says, we're going to fight so you can go lay down and rest. So you can go do things that you need to do. Inflammation is now cool the inflammation. But the problem there is that even if the inflammation is cooled temporarily, the underlying mechanisms of inflexibility are still there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. You talk a lot about flexibility, inflexibility. That seems
Correct.
to be really the through line.
That's the
a
through
lot
line.
of the things that you're talking about to me. And so, in your bio, one of the things it talked about was in the heart of every problem lies its solution.
Yes.
And so where is the first step of the solution when it comes to being flexible? Because I think you're bringing something very it's almost so simple it's complicated, and I think it could be confusing to the average person not knowing what that means. So first, well, I have two questions. What's the first step, and define flexibility again in a kindergarten definition?
So let's go back to the analogy of the highway. So I decide that this ramp is not open. That means I have to now be willing to take a different road. So first step of your question is, one, I have to recognize that I'm actually stuck. This is very, very important.
Right. Awareness, number one.
Awareness.
I see that in my coaching business. If you're not,
Right.
my clients are aware. You have to be aware.
You have to be aware. You have to be aware that I've done this X amount of times, and
Right.
here is the result. The definition of insanity. You really have to understand your own insanity.
Right. And that you're stuck and you don't know what the next step is. So you need to reach out to someone, or a you and a me, or
Correct.
something.
Correct. Yeah. So it's like, somebody, you become old enough that you go, look, why am I in the same relationships again and again and again and again and again? There's a reason for that. The same relationships show us that there's an inflexibility going on there. And so that inflexibility then invites us into the opportunity of change. And so awareness is like, oh, I've tried this again and again and again and again. Now pause. Pause. And then begins the second phase of exploration.
Yeah.
So now that phase takes usually it takes someone else, because it's hard for us to go inside because there's a lot of blind spots internally. And so someone else can quickly assess where our blind spot is.
Yeah.
And that blind spot again will be in terms of the inflexibility, which would be this: I'm holding on to a rigidity, a particular way. I want it to be this way according to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. So let's move on a little bit. EMDR, a 1 or 2 sentences on what it is. So for the person who is listening and has no idea, and how it can help you.
It's the #1 method in the world for dealing with trauma, period.
Okay. So let's talk about that. I want to talk about trauma for a minute, because I recently read a book that I really I don't even know how it ended up. I ended up reading it. I didn't want to read it. It ended up being one of my favorite books. So I believe it just kind of like, universally just kind of came my way. but it was called What Happened to You, and it was by a doctor by the name of Bruce D. Perry, if you're familiar with him, and Oprah Winfrey. And the book is it's what happened to you, but it talks about he's someone who deals with trauma, and it was fascinating to whatever community level of trauma you've dealt with. It really just opens up your eyes a lot.
Yeah.
And so define trauma, because I think trauma can be very small and have a contagious big effect on someone.
Sure. The book that I really refer to often is "The Body Keeps a Score" by
That's what my therapist gave me years ago.
Basil van der Kolk. If you want to understand trauma and the body and the mind soul, maybe the best book so far.
I should have mentioned that book because my therapist talks about that book all the time.
So I'll kind of summarize that book and my work with people as well, in this next few minutes, which is this: there is no such thing as being human and not being impacted by small t and big T. There's just, you can't get around from it, right? And if you had a scale of what I call T, there's the smaller mild ones to the big, major ones, and each of them has an impact. And I want you to think about it this way: it's like a footprint of an elephant. An elephant may touch something lightly and come off of it, or an elephant may put all of its weight down and make a huge imprint in the ground. The deeper the imprint, the more it gets stuck inside and causes inflexibility.
Yeah.
So the correlation between trauma and flexibility is direct correlation.
Mm-hmm.
The more the trauma, the more inflexibility.
Right. And so I just want to pause for a second. So somebody may define that as stubborn, right? Or, what are some other words that people, because I see people as you're talking, I'm thinking of people that I know that have been through a lot of trauma, and they're inflexible, they're cold, they're distant, they're controlling, and so is that all part of just allowing the inflexibility to not be not surrendering to it?
Well, just you got to remember something. Let's bring the heart chakra into this discussion, which is this: the larger the trauma, the more damage there is to the person's innermost well-being and innermost core of love and tenderness.
Yeah.
And so trauma blocks us from feeling that I can be authentically myself. So let's go back once again. So small trauma, I can still feel like I could be myself. Big trauma basically teaches me I cannot be myself. Well, what does it look like from an interactional perspective between someone who feels internally that they can't be authentically themselves? Will be a distance, a coldness, a closed heart chakra, or let me go the other way: a codependence and a sucking up of the other person's energetics. Also but indicates a trauma, which is another way of saying an inflexibility, which looks like love addiction. One is a love avoidance, one is love addiction. Both trying to heal the same wound, which is this: I don't feel I could be authentically myself.
Yeah. So interesting. So interesting. All right. So keep on going on the body that keeps the score.
Well, so there it goes. So what happens is the body stores the trauma. The body remembers the trauma in its somatic expression. And of course, then there are mind and emotional components to this, right? So trauma stores it in the 3 packets: emotions, sensations, and thinking, right? The 4th one is the most important one. It is what I call the I am.
Yeah.
So analogy, I use this analogy all the time. Little girl is in the kitchen. She's, let's say, 5, 6 years old. Mom and dad are cooking. She's in the kitchen, and dad asks her to get something, and she spills it on the floor. And he turns around. He's like, "How could you do that? What is the matter with you?" In that moment, the little girl's internal state is this: first, the body will respond by starting to create tension. There'll be a tension in the energetic system. That's what it feels like. That energetic system, as it closes down, is the beginning of the formation of saying, I can't relax and be in this space authentically myself. This is the beginning of it. And this all happens within a second to 2 seconds. Just remember how fast. The next thing is going to be emotions. Most likely for that child, the emotions are going to be, I don't feel good about this. Third one in the mind related to the self will be, it must be my fault.
Yeah.
Most children, due to the need to survive, will put it on themselves. Majority. You get a kid once in a while who goes, "That's on my dad or my mom," and so forth. But majority of children, 8, 8.5, will say, "Oh, that must be my fault." So that little girl internalizes that, and it's now she carries this in the unconscious that there must
Yeah.
be something wrong with her. Well, how does that show up? As a tightness and a stiffness in her personality. Now she can't be herself. And now she starts to believe that maybe if she's good enough for daddy, he won't be mad at her and he'll love her again. And she becomes the type A straight A student, and then goes on to try to be always perfect for men and her father.
Yeah.
Just from that one moment, it could be. Now,
Yeah.
it's unlikely that that one moment would do it if there's a warm environment that counterbalance that. I want to be very clear here. It's not like you're gonna mess up your kids because you had that one moment. Everybody needs to relax about that, right?
Yeah.
It's more about the environmental ongoing feeling tone that really sets the stage. If that's a once in a while thing for that father and he's warm the rest of the time, okay, much easier. So look at what I keep saying: warmth and love. Love is the basis for us
Yeah.
to heal all of the T's. It's
Yeah.
love.
I love it. I love it. I love everything you're talking about. Right. It is love. And so talk about maybe, and I don't know if you do this, so I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there a meditation or something that you guide people through to get
Yeah.
into their heart? Right. Because
Yeah.
I find something, Alex, that like, as a business coach, I find this, that people have a hard time self-regulating themselves. People have a hard time recalibrating. People are so in their heads, and it's easy to do. You turn on the news. One of the things I noticed about your bio is you have no social media minus your website. So, how do you get people into their hearts?
You got to enter into the body. So the body,
Yeah.
entering into the body means entering into your heart. Why? You've got to remember. Let's go back to the trauma. With trauma, it's not safe to go back into the body. Why? Because the body holds the tension that was created when the trauma happened. So therefore, the intensity of the somatic experience is so uncomfortable. I can't go back and deal with that. So most people live their life avoiding the original somatic experiencing. So when we say, how do we begin to heal with it? We help people learn to get comfortable over time, more and more, with their somatic experiencing, and not to become overwhelmed by it. So when you talk about
Yeah.
emotional dysregulation means that when I have an experience in my body, I need to run away from it. That's what that means, right? So what do? We use anger or shutting down, all these other methods, or drugs and alcohol or other substances and other addictions, to deal with the intensity of the somatic. Well, there
Yeah.
are a lot of heart-centered, I can't get into all of them, but there's a lot. Let's say there's a lot of heart-centered practices that then create an internal state that starts to welcome these feeling tones. Two great
Yeah.
books. One by Pema Chodron called Welcoming the Unwelcome. I love it. It's fantastic for this, for learning how to come back into the body. And of course, Tara Brach's book on radical acceptance is the other one. These two, and there's many more that people can
Yeah.
search, but those two are wonderful books on guiding us to come back to learning how to inhabit the body and experience what's going on in a safe and loving way. And by doing that, we return back to our original state, and we feel we can go into
Yeah.
the world and be authentically ourselves.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I want to talk about is, because I think it'll help a lot of people, is finding the time and the space to actually do this, right? Self-care, and personal wellness. One of the things I find, Alex, is I've been meditating for, I think, 30 years. I've been putting this into, not perfect by any means, but I find that when I do my I'm a business coach, but I do time management, keynotes and trainings, and so I always ask the question: how many people in the room don't feel like they have 5 extra minutes in a day? And whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people, or it doesn't matter. 95% of the people raise their hand.
There's a
And so I
reason for
say to
that.
them, if I could give you 5 minutes back, will you feel like you got something out of today? They're like, oh my God, yes. And 80% of them don't even believe that I can do that, but I do. And so why, how do people find the space to do what you're talking about?
It's a mindset. It's not the actual time.
I agree. Yeah.
Let's get big on this for a second. It's this.
Yeah, let's do it.
People within the Western society, especially within the business world, operate from the belief system, maybe majority, maybe not, but you can correct this for me or not, driven by the idea that at some point in their pursuit of whatever they're pursuing, then they'll get to a point where it'll all be okay, be it money, then the time will be there. Like there's something down there that after I've done all of this, then I'll go,
yeah.
You understand? It's a deeply ingrained
100%.
belief system. So then that belief system does not actually trust in that I can actually achieve what I want to achieve within a more relaxed body mind, right? Number one. But I'm getting to a bigger topic. It's existential. It's an existential issue, which is I believe that materiality and things eventually will make me happy, John.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Right.
issue. And if
And
there's
they
not a
don't.
shift, and if there's not a shift in that mindset, why should I slow down? You understand? So you're asking me about time. I'm talking about mindset.
Right. I'm talking about myself. I am 51 years old, and when I was 23, I had a company that I sold, and when I was 25, I got a Porsche Boxster because I was able to do it, and I got it, and after the first day, I remember thinking, yeah, God, I thought this would make me pretty happy, and it didn't at all. If anything, it did the opposite. And so I ended up a year and a half later, I ended up getting rid of it. I had met this, you couldn't get him at the time. And I had met this person who was obsessed with cars. And he said, the day you want to get rid of it, I'll take it. And I was done. But to that, I remember that, Alex, as clear as day, that feeling. And that has always stuck with me. I felt like it was kind of a gift, and the journey of actually getting the car was to actually experience that exact feeling in a big way.
And that's it right there. It's what you're talking about there, right? You just named it. It's that feeling, and in that feeling, this is a classic Rupert Spira comment. Rupert Spira is a non-dual teacher, right? And one of his most amazing quotes, which I remember now for years, he said this: "The point of all seeking is to experience not seeking." When I heard that, it blew my head off.
I love it. Say it again.
The root of all seeking is to end seeking. Now, I want to explain what that means. So let's say I pine for something, whatever it is, right? And let's say it's an object, and I get that object. In that moment, there's this, in the moment of I want nothing else. There's no more seeking. There's no more desire for something.
Right.
But the didn't belong to the object. The object didn't have an in it. It is the not seeking anymore. That's the
Yeah.
What we all actually want on the deepest level is to no longer seek for anything.
Yeah.
That is our deepest yearning. And that is a radical shift to a business person's mindset.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's really just surrendering and trusting the universe, doing everything you can, and detaching from the outcome is also what I'm hearing you say, right?
It's more than that. It's beyond the outcome in the business world. It's a understanding of what is joy, what is contentment, what is well-being. It's a deep dive into one's own understanding of what is well-being. And I don't mean like I feel well now. No, a much larger sense of at ease, at peace. I never use the word happiness. I never in my life use the word happiness. It's not in my vocabulary. Peace and deep contentment are important. And how are you going to do those? Those don't happen with objects, people, and experiences.
Yeah.
They cannot provide that.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. We're gonna have you back for a series or something. This is it's such important stuff. I want to go into a little bit of a speed round in a second, but I want to ask one more question about on your website and community journey to wholeness .health. There's something on it that I love the saying. It's explore your innermost being, right? So I just want to go internal real quick again. And so how do people get internal, in touch with their being? Like, give them
slow down and be quiet.
Yeah, tell them how to do that.
Slow down and be quiet. A lot.
Yeah.
I'm serious. I'm serious.
Is that so? For example, I have a chair in my office, right? It's right there.
In the chair, walking, go in nature.
Right.
Start with nature. Really, I mean, like, I'm giving a very simplistic. I mean, you're asking me for a big topic, right? But I'm gonna give it kind of an immediate go. Go into the woods, go into nature, learn, or go to a yoga class. Go do something where you're not talking, and you're still and you're silent and you're listening to nature. Let nature nourish you, because nature has quietness, healing, right? And go on the weekends or in the morning, if you have backyard, go outside, go sit quietly, and today especially, get off the technology. Get off the technology. Go be quiet.
I love it. Let's do a quick speed round, Alex. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm about to go into a 10-day retreat in December where it's all silent. So it's 10 days of silence, and I'm going to do 44 of those in the next coming years. So 40 days of silence.
Yeah.
Now that'll do something to you.
Yeah. I'd love to have you on the show right before and right after.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Let's do a quick speed round. I just want to simplify some of the stuff that you've talked about because you've given it, but I find sometimes even spoon feeding it. What is one, how can somebody do what you just said in one, as far as how can somebody be in nature and get into the mindset to recalibrate themselves and be silent in 1 minute or less a day?
Feel that what you've been doing again and again and again is futile, and you're fed up, and you really want it to be different.
Yeah. And think community, we talk about this micro actions, right? Is just spend, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired is what, I'm thinking of when you say that, which is so invest in yourself and take the minute and go for a 1 minute walk in nature, be silent for a minute, put your phone down for a minute,
eat quietly, have your cup of coffee in quiet, at work, on the hour, take 1 minute of mindful breathing, just for 1 minute. You can do that. Everybody can do that.
Everybody can do it.
1 minute before you get on your Zoom, the most important Zoom call that you have had in your life that you think, 1 minute of quiet and breathing.
Yeah. I read a book, I think 25 years ago. You're making me think of it, Alex. It's called Living Your Yoga. And it was a book. I don't know if you read it, but most anybody can do yoga when you're in the yoga class, but can you live yoga off the mat?
That's it.
And so in real time, how do you recommend someone respond versus react and get quiet within the real time millisecond moments based on your
you have to develop a very strong awareness practice. And breath work, breath awareness, breath meditation is the most effective, quickest way to help a person pause in the activation of the habitual.
Yeah, I love it. So, last question, best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Do you have 30 seconds on that?
Sure.
I went to a Zen retreat when I was younger. I was 21 years old, and I was a hotshot, arrogant little young man. And they told me that the Zen teacher was present, and he was going to give an interview for everybody. It was a special day, And so there was 3 hours before we went to meet this teacher. And I remember for 3 hours, I didn't meditate. I was trying to think of the most important question that he's going to be impressed by. I was trying to be the most amazing Zen practitioner that he's ever seen in his entire life for 2,500 years of Buddhism. That's what was in my mind. You can understand the mindset at that young age. So I walk in, he welcomes me in. I ask him the question. He looks at me, he smiles, and he starts laughing for a whole 2-3 minutes. He gives me a hug and he sends me off. The message was there. Relax, young man. Enjoy life. That was the best piece of advice that I've ever gotten in my life.
Yeah.
Relax and enjoy.
Yeah, it's good. I love it. Tell people, Alex, how people can connect with you and learn more and all that other
the website. I don't do those social media. I don't really care. My website is the place to really go, so
journey to wholeness.health.
Yeah.
Think community. Alex, I thank you so much. I loved every syllable of this talk, and it was so great. I like to extract one thing at least, but there's so many things to extract. But I would say one thing, think community, that you hear me talk a lot about, a lot of guests talk about it, and Alex kind of wrapped it up beautifully, which is get into nature, right? Get into nature and get into a space where you can be quiet. Leave your phone at home and just get into nature. It's so, so, so important. Alex, this was great. Think community. Thanks so much for taking time to listen. Alex, I loved everything, and we're gonna have to have you back again and continue these deep talks.
Thank you.
If you want to reach Alex, journey to wholeness.health, and you can reach me, Think Community, at johndwoskin.com. Alex, stay on the line for a minute, and we'll catch up a little bit. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Alex.